The general public sees this as Veganuary is bad, don't go vegan, and do this instead. That's the message they receive, whether it's intended that way or not. If we take your campaign at face value and we take it to its logical conclusion, we end up with not a very nice world. Like, if you told me that all I had to do was offset my flying, I would fly more. It doesn't change that the Veganuary, the organization, was sacrificed for a goal of another organization. There were some recent headlines in the UK about the charity FarmKind coming out with a Forget Veganuary campaign. This has been quite a controversial campaign. Everyone's had a lot of thoughts on it. I have a lot of thoughts on it. And I'm here today with Tom Norman from FarmKind, who's the co-founder. And I believe you're the man behind this campaign. Is that correct?
Sort of, yeah. So I'm the co-founder of FarmKind. It's very much a team effort, but yeah, we've all worked on this together.
Fair enough, cool. And so, yeah, I mean, we're going to give you an opportunity to talk a little bit about FarmKind and, of course, what you do and, you know, why you do what you do and what the organization is. Before we jump in, I do want to make something clear, a bit of a disclaimer, if you will, and that in this whole thing, I'm not a neutral sort of journalist or something like that. I do care about animals like you do. I donate as well to, you know, animal sanctuaries and raise donations. And I do have some strong opinions in all of this. This will be friendly and be fair, but we're going to push where it needs to be pushed, and we're going to find out. We're going to get to the bottom of some stuff. And another quick little disclaimer is that this isn't going to be some sort of abolitionist versus welfareist or video, nothing like that. I'm not coming from an anti-FarmKind position here. I'm open to what FarmKind does, but we are going to be looking into this decision to what I believe has been, you know, publicly denouncing veganism and Veganuary in order to raise donations. We're going to be looking into that. That's what we're here to really push on and question. Now, before we get to the controversy, we'll give you a chance now to talk about FarmKind. I mean, for someone who's never heard of FarmKind, what is it? What do you normally encourage people to do? What kind of change are you aiming for? You know, why this? A bit about you, basically. Give us a nutshell introduction.
Yeah, sure. So FarmKind, we're quite a young organization. We were started by myself and my co-founder in roughly the early 2024. We've been kind of public since August 2024. And basically what we exist to do is to try to increase the amount of money that's going towards charities working to help farmed animals. So what maybe some of your listeners will know, but some might not be aware, is globally we have, roughly speaking, $300 million going to help farmed animals each year, which is a tiny amount of money. This is like roughly what McDonald's makes in profits in about a week, going across the whole world to try and help 80 billion land animals, countless fish and insects, and all these animals that are suffering in factory farming. This is just simply not enough money. There are a lot of really amazing organizations out there doing incredible work and great ideas out there for other organizations that could be doing good work that don't get funded, can't help animals because there isn't enough money for everybody to do their work. And so that's the problem that we're trying to face. And really the kinds of people that we're looking at are particularly people who, and I think this will be a really relevant point to kind of, as we kind of carry this conversation on, the really large number of people out there who surveys say hate factory farming, think it's wrong. About 50% of people will say they want a ban on factory farming in surveys. But almost all those people are not vegans, they're not vegetarians. They might be like reducing the amount of meat and trying to take some steps to like eat a bit less meat and stuff. That's more common, but they're not like in that sort of like vegan or veganish category. So there's like a lot of people out there who are not taking the kind of step that we in the animal movement typically say individuals should take if they care about this issue, but they say they care about this issue. And given that like 95% of the donations that go to animals are going to dogs and cats, you can see that there's like a lot of people out there who are giving to animals. They're happy to donate a little bit of their money to help animals, but they're not helping farmed animals at all because they're not changing their diet and they're not donating to farmed animal charities. And it's these are the people that we're trying to speak to. We're trying to say, look, we know you love animals. We know you hate the way that they're treated in factory farms. You can choose to help. One of the ways you can help is obviously veganism. We don't emphasize that because there are lots of other people emphasizing that. We say, look, one of the ways you can help is to donate. You can take some of that money you're already donating or donate a little bit more, and you can have a surprisingly big difference for animals for a surprisingly small amount of money. So One of the big headline numbers that we use, most of our donors are in the US, so we say 23%, $23 a month can help animals about as much as cutting all factory farm products from your diet altogether. I think another powerful statistic is about 83 cents can free a chicken from a cage. So you can help an amazingly large number of animals really profoundly change their lives for actually really small amounts of money that a lot of people can afford to give. And so that's really what we're focused on trying to do: get more people excited about donating, more people interested in donating, share information. And the way that we do that is we recommend a number of charities we think are particularly good. They're not the only great charities out there, but these are 6 great charities. They've been evaluated by independent reviewers and also expert grant makers. So we're confident these are really great charities. So when people are thinking about where they want to give, we can say, look, these are good places. You can trust that your money is actually going to help animals if you donate to these charities.
That's honestly, it's a great pitch, and that's what I heard about the first time I heard about FarmKind. And even as I'm a vegan myself, and as you probably well know, and I've been working in advocacy since 2017, and so I have to admit, when I first came across my laptop, let's say, I was interested, but a little bit, am I sure? I don't know how I feel about this. But then I realized, as you said, that I'm not the target audience anyway, and there is a massive untapped number of people that I suppose as vegans we just don't tap, right? And so it's a tool in the toolbox. And I don't. There's a lot of debate that can be had on that. That's the whole abolition versus welfare thing we're not going to get into. But ultimately, it's a tool in the toolbox. And I think the way you explained it there is very much that tool in the toolbox. Like, okay, yeah, it's one of the many ways we can try, right, to change the world. But most people didn't discover FarmKind through that, right? Through your pitch just now and the core of your organization. That's not how they found it. Actually, I'd say that most people have discovered FarmKind in the last 2 weeks, I suppose, since when was it? 30th of December, was it? Or 27th of December? I can't remember when this went live, somewhere around there. This is how most people are finding it. And this is where this massive media push through the Telegraph, the Daily Mail, a couple of others, and they came out with this article with the headline, Veganuary champion quits to run meat eating campaign, or I think the Daily Mail went with something a little spicier than that, but even that's spicy enough as it is. And the message, little different to what you said here, actually quite different to what you said here, has been forget Veganuary, right? Keep eating meat, keep eating animal products, donate instead. And the message has been that there's been claims that vegan dogma is not only unhelpful, but as you've said, not you specifically, but your representative said, it's damaging to the fundamental goal of reducing animal suffering. That diet change campaigning actually prolongs animal suffering by alienating people, that it puts an upper limit on what people can do, and also emphasized that you guys are pushing behind, I suppose, I don't know if you're paying them for this, I would assume so, competitive eaters to eat nothing but animal products for competitions for a whole day, and then to what you guys call offset it by donating. So first of all, is that fair? Is that a fair description of the coverage, and at least?
It's a fair description of the coverage. I think so. One of the things we've tried to get corrected in some of the coverage is that this is like a meat eating campaign, because that's definitely not it. We're not encouraging people to eat meat. What we're doing is we're acknowledging the reality, which is that lots of people do eat meat, are going to eat meat, and saying like, okay, you're not prepared to give up meat or even get in with Veganuary. You can still do something, and that is offsetting. Now, obviously, this campaign, I'm sure we'll talk more about like our choices and why we've decided to do it. This campaign is doing that in like quite a it's like setting up us this sort of dichotomy between Veganuary and like offsetting. But fundamentally, that's what we're trying to do. Is we're trying to say, we're trying to speak, as I say, to those people who are like not very interested in Veganuary at all. Like that, the media choices for this campaign have targeted on sort of like right of center media, who already their readers tend to be older. They tend to be there's not the sorts of people who were thinking of doing Veganuary in the first place. And we're trying to say, okay, can we reach them with something else that maybe they do find a bit more appealing? And because essentially because like at this point in the year, like one of the ways that reliably factory farming and veganism and these kind of questions get into the media is through the sort of Veganuary. This is a time of year where journalists are interested in talking about this in a way that maybe they're not at other times of the year. And so that's essentially why we decided to build the campaign around kind of this existing media event. I mean, one of the kind of reasons that we were sort of inspired to do this campaign is I remember reading for a number of years now. Each year, there's a like, instead of Veganuary, you should do this, and it's often like eat local or like eat organic or regenerative or something like this, right?
Yeah.
And we were like, well, what if we know that there's going to be that kind of critical Veganuary coverage, because there's always critical Veganuary coverage. Can we occupy that space with a message that's where everybody is agreed that factory farming sucks, and all we're debating is what are we going to do about that, right? So like we're trying to say, instead of having this like pointless conversation about, I don't know, should you be eating local stuff because your factory farm can be local too. Let's have a conversation about, we all agree factory farming is terrible for many, many reasons. What would you like to do about it? And so that was kind of like the thinking that started us engaging in like planning this campaign.
Yeah, I understand the logic. It makes sense. With the point that you don't feel like it's a pro meat eating campaign, and of course I wouldn't expect you to. I mean, you yourself are. I know we have a mutual friend who worked with you at an animal sanctuary. I've no doubt in my mind that you have great intentions and that you genuinely are in it for animals. So don't get me wrong here. Like, I don't think that you would intend to promote a meat eating campaign, and that's probably the media's put a little spin on that. But is it hard to blame them, considering that you do have competitive meat eaters as part of your team and they are advocating for your organization? One of these guys, I just saw a video by one of them. He went to a goat farm. He stood with all the goats around him talking about this campaign and how he's going to eat one of these goats, all of the entire goat, right? Almost boasting about that.
All these animals. Yep, guys, I'm going to help all of these. January's miserable. It's cold, it's dark, and you're broke from Christmas. And you expect me to give up my meat. As you guys know, I've done some crazy challenges. But there's one thing that I don't think I'll be able to stomach, and that's Veganuary. I've just found a whole smarter way to do it, look after the animals, and still be able to eat meat. Yep, that's right, I got you. Don't worry, don't stress. Like, there's something called factory farming, guys. Factory farming is terrible. If you don't know what it is, look it up. 85% of the meat that you eat are probably factory farmed, which is not great. It's not good stuff for the animals, guys. I love these animals. You know, I love my food. I also love my food. So that's the problem. For this reason, I've teamed up with a brilliant charity company, and they're called FarmKind, right? And I'm basically gonna demonstrate how this works. You don't have to eat salad. You don't have to give up meat. I'm gonna eat a whole lot of meat within 24 hours. Calculate exactly how much meat I take in, and see, you know, how much I'm offsetting. We'll be doing this on the 5th of January. I'll be doing 3 different challenges in that day, including eating one of these, a whole goat. That's right. And hopefully, you know, we can demonstrate how we do this, guys.
I mean, you can understand why people might see that and say, this is a meat eating campaign, right?
Yeah, I can. I wonder if you can say like, as I say, that we're not sort of trying to encourage people to eat more meat, but I do understand why, particularly the media who like to be sensational, have like taken that approach. The reason that we've particularly thought about working with these guys, they're competitive eaters, is because there's some research from an amazing organization called Pax Fauna, but I believe this is not unique to them. This is a finding that's been replicated other places, that one of the when it comes to the messenger for a sort of anti-factory farming campaign, people who eat meat are much more effective messengers to other people who eat meat than vegans. And so part of this is like, how can we make it really clear that other people like you, so thinking about the audience that we're targeting, other people like you also agree that donating it to help factory farmed animals is a good thing. And so obviously when you're in the media, you get very little time, but like, okay, how can we print that in primary colors? Because that's often what you need to do in these situations. We thought actually competitive eaters who like their entire job is built around eating food. A lot of the time that's like sausages or like hot dogs or something like this. So they're known for eating animal products.
Right.
If we get them to say, look, even though this is what I do with my time, I still think factory farming is really bad. We hypothesize that like a lot of people will listen to them who wouldn't listen to me, vegan, like guy who runs animal charity.
Is there any concern of the backlash that because you are using competitive eaters and they are actively promoting eating meat, including one guy going to, like I said, going to a farm and pointing at an animal and saying, I'm going to eat that whole animal. I don't know if he meant it that way, but it's the way it looked. Is there not a concern that you might end up creating that sort of feeling of, well, actually, I will maximize my consumption because I can offset it. And then, the offsetting thing, I was going to get to it later, but I guess we're on it now. Because for me, offsetting, I don't have a massive issue with the idea of offsetting when it comes to things that are a little bit more, like, for example, flying. We know that not flying is the best way to save that environmental impact, right? Offsetting mitigates it somewhat, but it's not a replacement for not flying. Everybody gets that. I think nobody's under the illusion that offsetting is the answer when it comes to flying. And when it comes to animals, it's even more sort of, it has less meaning even, because you can't, like, if you've exploited or killed an animal, you can't offset that, right? You literally can't. That individual, you can't offset what you did to that individual. So the word here does a lot. It does a lot of work, right? But I understand the concept. Don't get me wrong. I'm just saying it does a lot of work when you can't offset the harm you've done to that one individual animal. So it has to be viewed in a similar way to flying, if not in more of a casual way, and like, it mitigates some level of harm, but it probably should be taken possibly less seriously than flying, right? But my point is, anyway, the question is, I know I'm giving you a lot right now, so I'll get to the point of the question. Are you concerned that in the same way that if everyone said offsetting flying is the answer, people might just fly more, right? Are you concerned that you could have the same backlash here, not backlash, I suppose. What's the word I'm looking for here? Like a negative, an outcome.
Unintended consequence or something.
Unintended consequences that people eat more because now they feel like they can just pay, and that does the same thing as just not eating animals.
Yeah. So I think a really critical like thing to think about, and I think reasonable people can disagree on this, is where we are in kind of our mission. So we both share the same ultimate goal, which is to end the exploitation of animals by humans, right? And the question is, like, where are we in that journey? And I think reasonable people can disagree about this. I think, sadly, we're probably a really long way away from it. I think absent, like a really big breakthroughs in cultivated meat or something like this, I would say it's like maybe like unlikely that we'd see like that end goal in my lifetime. And so we're thinking, so in that context, when you're thinking about this as like, okay, we're a long way away from where we want to go, I think the solutions or the tools that make sense to us are quite different to the tools that would make sense to us if we were like much closer to the end of that goal. And so this is why essentially I think offsetting is like a valid approach, because we're in an environment where eating meat is normal in the sense of like, most people do it and most people think of it as just like part of life and kind of the default, if you like. And so the question really is like, or the question we think is, how do we get them to take some positive actions and to start doing something about this? We think that there's like a lot of, we can point to historical trends to suggest that asking people to go vegan, asking people to change their diet has been ineffective overall. Not talking about any one particular campaign, but just like overall. Because there's a great graph actually on Our World in Data where you can, it looks at like meat eating versus veganism versus vegetarianism and different diets. And you can sort of do a slider and you'll see that essentially, I think the meat eating stays exactly the same at 72% the entire way through. And the number for vegans and vegetarians kind of bobbles up and down a little bit, but it's essentially flat over the last 15 years. And this is just like, we're just not making progress at the moment on this thing. I think there are reasons why that might change in the future, including kind of breakthroughs in kind of alternative proteins and cultivated meat. That's incidentally why one of the charities we support is the Good Food Institute, because they're working on this particular problem. But at the moment, that seems like we're quite a long way away from that. And the current strategies people have developed on this don't seem to be having the kinds of overall kind of societal changing impacts that we would like to see. So we're saying, okay, if that's not where we are, if we can't solve that problem right now, like, can we get people to take some positive actions? And that's why we think offsetting makes sense, because when you're thinking in this kind of aggregate, like, yes, you can't, there's no amount of money you can pay to make that pig or that chicken alive again and give them a good life. But in the aggregate, you can prevent the next chicken from being stuck in a cage all its life. You can prevent the next pig from having its teeth removed without an aesthetic. You can prevent the next 1,000 shrimps from being killed without stunning or having their eye stalks crushed, these kinds of things. And so while, yes, you can't undo the suffering that has been caused by the animals that are already been farmed, we can still, in the aggregate, reduce the suffering that is being caused. And so that's kind of how we think, which is actually how, you know, how offsets on a plane work as well, right? You're not, your plane is still producing CO2. It's that you're like having an impact on CO2 in the aggregate. And so that's why like we talk about offsetting, and like that's why I think offsetting is a valid description of what we're doing.
Sure.
Yeah,
I think I want to be clear that I didn't. This is not a sort of interrogation or I suppose like a big critique of FarmKind. And this is only in light of FarmKind taking a position, publicly taking a position that appears to be at least anti-vegan, anti-veganuary, and pro-meat. And that's kind of the context we're talking about here. And I think everything you just said, I find it interesting, and I think a lot of people will find the ideas and the strategies and like, again, a tool in a toolbox. But I think most people are pointing to issues here in that it does appear the campaign appears to be giving the message to maximize consumption, regardless of whether you intended that or not. It does appear to be saying maximize by the people who are on your team. It does appear to be anti-vegan, at least disparaging of veganism by calling vegan dogma, and especially disparaging of Veganuary, which is why I'm bringing up these points. And specifically with Veganuary, I mean, we'll have to talk a little bit about the website. So far, I only talked about the Telegraph, the article, but on your website, forgetveganuary.com. I mean, you have a graphic at the top on the left side. It lists, things that when people go vegan, some of the common things that they come up against, I don't know, family being mean or having to check ingredients and learning this new skills. It lists them as like really like, oh, look, this is so horrible. Look at these horrible things you have to do. And you only save, I think it's 27 animals. But on the other side, it says you keep on doing whatever you want and you can save this many animals if you just donate. And you scroll down a little bit and there's this little game there. And it's directly mocking Veganuary. Like it's not. I wouldn't put this up for debate here. I mean, it's a game where you play as a little oat milk, and you move it around, and you have to dodge all the excuses and the challenges. And then if you crash, it just says bad vegan. So it really is. It really does overreach on the sort of the on the mockery side of things, and it's quite disparaging to Veganuary. And just I will give you a chance to respond to all this, but I just want people to like get the full like picture before we go into it as to why this is even an issue, or why we're even talking about this. And a big part of why this has exploded, why is it in the media, is actually because of who is the face of it, which is Tony Vanelli, who is, as the media has correctly reported, used to work for Veganuary. She was the head of communications at Veganuary, and is now fronting the Forget Veganuary campaign. So it appears to people, again, you can say whether this is right or wrong, up to you, but it appears that she's gone from being a vegan to being an anti-vegan to the general public, is what it looks like. Whether that's true or not, we don't know, but it's what it looks like, because she's talking about vegan dogma and, forget Veganuary. It really does appear like a big anti-vegan story. So I guess my question here with all that in mind is, I mean, did you anticipate that having a former Veganuary communications lead front this campaign called Forget Veganuary, which has all of this disparaging stuff towards Veganuary? Did you expect that all this could be read as like a complete rejection of veganism itself rather than a strategy disagreement?
So I guess like I would slightly question some of the premises in that
Yeah, go
question.
for it. Yeah, so I mean, it was a lot of
Um,
information, but
yeah.
go
So
for it. Yeah.
I think obviously this is very much in the eye of the beholder. And I wouldn't dispute that many people have perceived this as like disparaging of vegans and so forth. It is also the case that many people read what we were doing in the way that we intended it, which is as some light-hearted ribbing of vegans and kind of playing with some stereotypes. Also, some things that are true. So, essentially, what our website does is it makes I think it makes two basic claims. One is that like being vegan is very, many people find being vegan very hard. I think this is fairly hard to like disagree with. Like, not everyone finds it hard. Obviously, I don't. Living in London, I'm very privileged. Like, there's loads of really good vegan food here, but many people find it hard. And secondly, that you can help as many or more animals, or as much, and prevent as much suffering by donating. And I think both those claims are like pretty pretty defensible. The way that we do that is obviously trying to use humor, trying to like reference stereotypes that people would find recognizable, around like how things can be difficult, like around being vegan. Things can be difficult. You have to check lots of packages. Milk powder is in everything. These kinds of things. And I appreciate that not everyone got that as a joke or felt that it was a joke, and that's legitimate. As I say, humor is entirely subjective. I can't tell someone they should have responded differently, of course. We did actually make a few changes to the website in response to feedback. So there were a few points in there that, although it wasn't the way we intended them to be read, could be read as making claims like being vegan is less healthy or is unhealthy. We don't want to like sort of even be seen as propagating that meme. So we changed some wording, removed some bits from the website to kind of remove those things, and to try and stick much more closely to this single thing, which is actually, do you know what? Like, for many people, being vegan is hard, and there are alternatives. I have actually now forgotten what your initial question was, having gone through that.
It was just. I mean, yeah, this actually adds to it. So basically, the point was that I know that the jokey side of things, I understand now that that's how it was intended to be perceived. But I guess you did answer the question, because I think the answer would be that no, you didn't anticipate it. Because I understand from your perspective, this was a tongue-in-cheek thing, but I think maybe you didn't anticipate that having someone ex Veganuary come out and front it and use things like vegan dogma and things like that, then it's very hard to perceive it as a joke when the individual is following all of the anti-vegan, pro-meat propaganda playbook. It's a dogma. It doesn't really help. It actually hurts animals. Vegans harm all animals. That whole thing that the anti-vegans use, it really makes it difficult to see that and think, oh, okay, it's just a tongue-in-cheek thing. And I know the vegans aren't even, the animal people aren't your target market here, but I do know that there's been, it's not only the vegans that have been a little bit irked, I think, and confused, let's say, or annoyed, let's say. I know that actually within within the welfare movement itself, like, the welfare reform, there's been a lot of people who have also kind of highlighted this. So, I mean, what are your thoughts on that? I mean, it doesn't feel like it was anticipated. Would it be fair to say that was maybe you missed that maybe?
So I think we definitely didn't anticipate the kind of the level of strength of the feeling that people would have. I think that, which is why we've, as I say, like things like, for example, we've taken some steps to like sort of change some things, and I've also been talking to people across the movement, like one-to-one and things like this, to try and like get perspectives and like see if there's something, what we could and should be doing differently, and that kind of thing. And coming on shows like this as well to explain kind of what our thinking. On a couple of specific things. So I guess there's the jokey bit, and then there is the serious bit of the message. Although this campaign is not aimed at like the movement or people who are doing work, like that's not our intended audience. I think there is a serious and also defensible like claim underneath some of these points. So when Tony says that she thinks like the vegan, like the way she put it is that like the insistence on veganism, and like this is like our primary message to people about what they should do, is hurting the movement or harming animals. What she's saying is not, because of mouse plagues or insects or any of this kind of stuff. That's not what she's referencing. What she's referencing is simply that this is a message that we think has limited cut through. Obviously, you and I are both examples of like many people find this message compelling to change their diets. Many people find this as like the obvious ethical response to what they see in factory farming. But many other people, and many more people, we think this is just a bar that is too high for them to cross, and that if they think that it is either go vegan or nothing, that even though they feel sympathy for animals, even though they hate the way what they see in factory farming, they are more likely to choose the nothing category than the vegan category, and that ultimately is harmful to what we're all trying to achieve if that's true. And so that's, I think, the point that she's trying to make there.
Yeah, no, I actually have spoken about that myself. I've written about that. I've got a Substack where I've written about that. I agree with Tobias Lehnart on this, that oftentimes black and white thinking doesn't fit into a nuanced world, and it can leave people choosing, if black is go vegan and white is do nothing, people might just say, I'll do nothing then. And then people who decide to start eating plant-based and make one mistake, and then, well, they've been told it's black or white, so I might as well do nothing then and just go back to eating steaks every day or whatever. Yeah, it is a problem. It's a shame if that is the actual message. It's a shame that I don't feel like that quite came across. It reads, especially the media, the way they did it, it does read like a just straight up anti-vegan argumentation. I can't say how Tony actually did it. And I know that I've seen that you've said in some forums that you feel that the media span it a little bit, which I understand. But I guess it was always going to be a risk with a campaign called Forget Veganuary. So it's very hard for people to interpret that any other way, really. And there is something that I wanted to touch on, because I think it's important. Again, I'm not here to defend Veganuary. That's not my only. I'm not a member of Veganuary. I'm not like a member of the team or anything like that. I'm just looking to bring some balance to it, because obviously they've not really done a proper response, and I don't think they will. So it is good to have some balance and find out what's really going on here. As whether you like it or not, you guys did come out on the attack. Maybe you didn't mean to, but it is a public attack, right? So, and one of the things that I've seen, again, I've been keeping up with. Well, both you and Aidan, the other co-founder, have been chatting online in some forums and some public places about the Veganuary team. And, I wanted to talk about, how they were in on this or weren't in on this. And it's been sort of hinted that they know what it's all about. It's okay. They're on board. It's a strategy sort of thing. But it doesn't appear to be the case. I've seen a spokesperson from Veganuary, again, not publicly, because I don't think they're going to come out publicly, but sort of semi-publicly say that they actually weren't notified of this properly. They were notified a campaign was coming and it was going to be an alternative, but they weren't told that it was going to be Forget Veganuary, and it was going to be like what feels like a kind of coordinated attack to help raise donations for FarmKind. So that being the case, I guess I just want to ask, you can correct that, obviously, if that's incorrect, or if you feel there's something nuanced there, but on a personal level, did you ever consider the kind of a personal impact this might have on, not just the co-founders of Veganuary, but Veganuary themselves? They're going into the hardest part of the year for them and their organization, taking all the crap from like Piers Morgan and etc. And, having to also take some, whether it's, perceived crap, maybe it's not real, but it's perceived heat from their own side. Was that a consideration for you guys as well?
So yes, it is a consideration. Just to really quickly go back. Veganuary have posted a response in a couple of places. I want to be very careful about like making sure I get the precise things right. But so people can go and look for that. What is the case is when we were initially planning this campaign, we hadn't decided what it was going to look like or what the messaging would be or any of that sort of stuff. We notified them at that stage, and then we also shared follow-ups once we had kind of just got closer to like formalizing it. We did share with them the name of the campaign before it went out, and we also told them about the Telegraph article, which was kind of, so there were some other pieces that got published that hadn't actually just like picked up on the Telegraph article, but the Telegraph article was the one that we kind of seeded, and we told them about that before it went out, so they could like have a response and things like this. I hope that like we haven't implied that like Veganuary was sort of in on it or something like this, because I wouldn't want to do that. That's not the case. This is a FarmKind campaign. Veganuary has their own campaign. We notified them of these things as we're going forward. We thought carefully about what we thought the likely impacts of this campaign were going to be. As I say, we predicted that there was going to be critiques of Veganuary anyway, as there always is each year. It's part of the kind of media cycle around this. Journalists are trying to find some new angle for this every year, and we were hoping to, rather than add to that, we were hoping to sort of occupy that space that we knew was going to be there anyway, with a critique that's hopefully at least like where it's very easy for everyone in the critique to agree that factory farming is terrible, and like we're sharing a lot of the same messages. We're just deviating on like what we're recommending people do in response to that. In terms of like the personal stuff, I think like, so we very much wanted to leave it to Veganuary's leadership in terms of like how they were going to handle that stuff, because it's just not for me to, it's not for me to be involved in that at all.
Okay, right. So yeah, I mean, I'm not where to ask this question now, actually, but I think we'll come back to it a little bit later. I think for now, let's bench some of the more personal stuff then, and talk a bit more about the claims made by the campaign. And again, these are critiques that have arisen from people who are looking at this, who have sent me comments and questions that they wanted to know from you. And they're looking at this as a FarmKind versus Veganuary situation, and not the other way around, because Veganuary hasn't done a website and a campaign against FarmKind, where it does appear to be the other way around. And a lot of the claims that are made, I think, could do with a little bit of investigation, so we can see what you think. So a lot of the critique of Veganuary, or of the idea of Veganuary, is that it's just individuals doing a diet for a month, and there's all these individual changes that are difficult, and this is why you should donate instead. But Veganuary is not only limited to that, right? I mean, you know this, I'm sure, but it wasn't. It was oversimplified, I think, in your campaign to make it easier to I suppose criticize them, so that you could to raise donations. And so I mean, they do year-round work, right? They do institutional work. They're working with various levels, various organizations, businesses. They've got permanent and semi-permanent plant-based options into various businesses, companies around, especially the UK and Germany. They've done a lot of work. So I mean, given that, do you think? I mean, I guess first of all, you knew that, I'm going to assume, right? Because the campaign acts like that's not the case. That's why I'm clarifying that. So with that being the case, was that something that, was this part of the strategy to sort of kind of not cover that and just talk about it as in for the individual and represent Veganuary as only that, or what was the thought behind that?
Well, so the thing that we're kind of latching onto and trying to sort of say like, oh, well, there's an alternative, is specifically for the yearly campaign around like Go Vegan for January, right? Which is like also kind of, everyone knows that as being called Veganuary. There's like
it's
that
the most public
campaign,
part of it.
Yeah, and then there's like the organization Veganuary that does other stuff, but like that's the thing that everybody knows. Like that's the thing that it's commonly referred to as, and that's what everyone knows. And like, indeed, that's how the organization started. And like that campaign is called Veganuary. So that is the specifically. So we don't talk about any of the other stuff because we're not trying to launch any critique of the organization as a whole or any other work. And as I say, we some of the charities that we support that we recommend are engaged in various different kind of diet change programs.
Okay,
we're not making a broader kind of point about like those sorts of things. What we're doing is we're specifically talking about this January Go Vegan for January, if you like, call the campaign that I think everyone knows as Veganuary. in the
Sure.
UK.
That's great. Yeah. That leads us on to our next point. Actually, the question that came up was about this upper limit thing that Tony said, and this sort of contradicts what you said just now, in that diet change is not something that FarmKind is opposed to, and actually you work with charities that do promote it, because Tony actually specifically said that diet change is actually holding animals back. Like, I can't remember exact words, but it was there in the Telegraph interview. And there's a ceiling to it. There's an upper limit to it, she said. Now, I have a question. I sort of a statement and a question. And again, you're free to reject the premise. And I'm sorry if I keep. I know I'm packing a lot of information sometimes in with these questions, but I feel there's a lot to say, and I'm trying to I'm trying to get everybody on the same page before we ask you a question. So, but I think we both agree. And you tell me if not, that enough people. We have some basic supply and demand. It's not so simple, but it's very complicated. But basically, if people reduce demand to a certain point, supply will reduce. Now, there'll be, government subsidies make that more complicated, but at some point there is a cutoff where the government won't be able to subsidize 100% of the bloody industry, right? So if enough people drop demand, then obviously less animals bred in captivity, exploited and killed. Many farms will shut down. Factory farming would cease to exist if people reduced to a massive level. So the world could look very different just by reducing that. But with Tony's point about the upper limit of diet change, that is the upper limit of diet change. That is it right there. As in a world potentially without farming, right?
What she's saying is that. And she did a TV interview the other day, which I think made it's fair. So she's on GB News, and I think she made this point like a little bit clearer, because you can kind of when you're in broadcast. But what she's saying is, like, you as the individual, you can only not eat the animals you were going to eat. Depending on how lucky you are with your money, there is potentially no impact, no limit on like how much you could give. And that's what she's meaning. So she's not saying like veganism overall, if we imagine like everyone did it, that this would like not solve the problem. She's saying like you as an individual, because that's all you can really control is your own actions. Like the limit of what you can not eat is what you were going to eat otherwise.
Right. I understand. But I guess my question here, I suppose the critique of this idea, the question is that no individual person should be considering veganism or eating a plant-based diet as an individual thing. It's not. The only way it makes a difference is if it's collective. So you as an individual don't make that much difference, to be totally honest with people. Say that, but I'm just one person of a billion. What difference will I make? The answer is, if you look at it specifically that way, probably not much. But the point is that it's many drops make an ocean, right? The point is, if we all get on board, that's where things start to shift. And that's kind of the point of why to change. It's not just a principle. There's an outcome here that if enough people do it, we get on board, we change the world. That's how change has always happened, right? It's not just one person changing that changes the world, unless you're the bloody president and you can, bring it into law or something. Whereas, and this is where I was going to flip this on its head just to see what you think, right? I would position to you that actually, if we're going to go versus, which I don't agree with, by the way, I don't think there should be a one or the other here, but if we're going to go one or the other, surely the upper limit actually comes with money, because if people continue to consume the same way they consume, that means the same amount of animals bred into captivity. The only difference changes with when money's brought in is how they're treated. And you can only improve that to it. There's a very firm ceiling there to what you can do. I mean, you can end up with a situation where every animal gets a VR headset or something and thinks they're in a beach, but that starts to get ridiculous, right? And if you want to, how many billions of dollars or whatever trillions would that cost, right? So you can get ridiculous with it, but ultimately, the only way to actually change the system is if people stop paying into it for these products. And so, yeah, I would flip it on its head. I would argue that the actual limit, the upper limit, is actually with donations, not with diet change. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so I think this is where it comes back to this point I made earlier about like, where are we on the overall journey? I think that's really critical. And as I say, I think reasonable people can disagree with this. And actually, just like as a really quick side point, I am very much in favor of like lots of different people taking different strategies and approaching things differently, because I think fundamentally none of us know. Like, I'm telling you what I think my best guess is about where we are and how long things will take, but I am very aware that I could definitely be wrong, and I'm very glad that other people have more optimistic or more kind of, if you like, aggressive in the sense of like trying to move quickly, like ideas about how things are and how things can change, because like I would love it if they were right and I was wrong, and things are going to change faster than I think they will as well. And I think like this kind of proliferation of approaches, so we're trying lots of different things, seeing what works, given how uncertain the environment is just like that's how we should be doing things. Because though my best guess is that we're in a fairly early in this journey, and I would point to some of the evidence I've mentioned already around like the pretty flat numbers of like vegans and vegetarians over the last 15 years, for example. The fact that the consumption of meat over globally, it continues to rise. The fact that even in the United States, for example, what we're seeing is like people are eating fewer cows but more chickens, so more animals are being farmed, and those animals are having worse lives. Like ultimately, at the moment, things are, if you look in the wide aggregate, things are getting worse, not better. And so because of all these things, I think we're at a position where we're like quite early in our journey and quite early in the process. And this is where making this is why I think money and capacity is like so important. So what we need to be doing, I think, as a movement is really focusing on capacity building. And that means having more people and having more money and having more people who are doing something and feel like they are part of the solution. And what I think is that like if the barrier to being part of the solution is you have to like change your diet, many people, as I've said, are going to just think that that's too high a cost for them right now, but they are prepared to do something like, most people donate some money to charities. Many people are prepared to like give some money a month, and then they can feel like they're part of the solution, and like they're on our team now. And we're not saying to them like you have to like you have to go vegan to be on our team. They're saying as long as you're doing something to help animals, you're on our team. And I think that's actually really powerful and really helpful, because it allows us to like have more capacity, have more power as a movement, because we've got more people involved, we've got more people doing things, we've got more resources to do these things. And like at the moment, because of where we are, I think strategies like getting hens out of cages are really, really important, because this is suffering right now, massive suffering for animals, that we can help those animals by getting them out of cages. So if you look, for example, in the UK, because of the work of a number of really amazing organizations, we've gone from about 50% of hens living in cages in about sort of 10 years ago. Now 80% of hens are cage free. And in the UK government's latest animal welfare strategy, they've committed to a ban on colony cages altogether in the UK, which is like amazing. And also looking at farrowing crates and all these kinds of things as well. And like, so this isn't going to mean that those animals have great lives and they're like, living like the humans in WALL-E, where like everything is done for them and stuff like that. But it is going to mean that they have much better lives than they otherwise would have. And that's a really big difference and a really big positive improvement. That's not where we should stop. It's not where anybody wants us to stop, but it is on the journey. And like right now, I think that's where we should be deploying a lot of our money, not all of it, but a lot of it, into these kinds of things where we're making the lives of animals meaningfully better. But once we succeed at these things, we can move on to like more ambitious and other things. And like eventually, hopefully, like what we'll be doing is really focusing our resources and our time in alternatives to farmed animals. I think probably what we'll need to do in order to really like end factory farming is have viable alternatives that like taste the same, that are as available or as cost effective for people to buy as the meat that they're used to. I don't think probably we're going to persuade everybody to like give up meat and eat tofu, much as I think tofu is amazing and really tasty. I think many people sadly disagree with me about that. So I think that's probably like, I think my theory of change, if you like, is like that, right? So we need to help animals right now. Incidentally, the reason that the animals are treated like shit in factory farms is because it's cheap to do it. When we improve their welfare by making sure that like Tesco's refuses to buy caged hens, for example, caged eggs, for example, or getting legal changes, it is increasing the costs. Basic economics 101 suggests that this is like having an impact on the number of people who are buying it and therefore the number of animals that are farmed as well. But I think we need to do that. for the animals that are going to be farmed inevitably. And I think we also need to be looking at like these solutions. I'm glad that people disagree with me and are doing vegan advocacy campaigns, because I might be wrong about that.
Yeah.
But I think this is like probably how this will be solved. And I think that there's like, I'm able to point to some historical evidence to support that view.
Yeah. I mean, look, everything I think your pictures of FarmKind, which is what this was as well, and then earlier on, I've spent some time in the welfare kind of reform world. As you might know, I'm friends with Tobias Leinart. He's been on the channel, and my followers, people who watch the videos, read the Substack, will know that I'm open-minded to different strategies. And like I said earlier on, tools in the toolbox. The reason that you're here though is not because I personally take issue. I mean, some of my subscribers will for sure, but I wasn't planning to argue with you about that. Like, was welfare reform the best thing, or is vegan advocacy the best thing? The thing that I want to get to the bottom of, and the reason I asked that question just then is because whether you like it or not, you've pitted yourself against veganism. Veganuary more so, but against veganism. I know it might not feel that way from you because you've got your strategy and you've got what you believe, which is not that, but publicly it is exactly what it looks like and feels like. And so I'm sort of not forced, but I'm choosing in a way to try and set the record straight on some of those things, and have some verses, like, okay, your way versus the vegan way. It's not necessarily. It doesn't have to be either way. And this is the other kind of thing a lot of people said. It doesn't have to be either way, but that's the way your campaign has decided to go ahead and push it, that it's forget Veganuary. It's literally called Forget Veganuary. It's our way, but don't do Veganuary, right?
Yeah. Can I speak to that specific?
Yeah, go for it.
Because I think this is a really important thing. So, do I like? So I agree. I'm not. I know what I think your questions are good. They're useful. Questions, and I know that you're asking useful, good questions, right? The point about why couldn't we just say, like, why don't you do either one, or like it doesn't have to be an either or? Why don't you do both these things? I think this is a fair point, because like obviously being vegan is a good thing, like a morally good thing, and it does have some impact, especially if like lots of people do it. It will have some impact on, if everybody who was vegan today gave it up, I would expect that like that would cause more animals to be farmed, right? Which would be a bad thing. The reason that the specific reason that we're saying like, why don't you do this instead, is because number one, we think that, as I say, like the people who we're targeting, we don't think that they were going to go vegan otherwise, right? But number two, our experience so far has been that like often when we start talking about factory farming, people the script in people's minds is that, right, you started talking about this, so now you're going to ask me to change my diet, and so they've already stopped listening to us, and they've already stopped like paying attention. And like we used to do videos where we'd get comments like, oh, I'm not going to go vegan, or like, I love bacon too much, when we had nothing in our video was talking about like diet change at all, and sometimes explicitly not talking about it, and you'd still get these comments. And so what we think is, essentially, in order to reach, there's a lot of people out there to reach, we have to like make it very clear that we're not asking them to change their diet, and we're not saying to do that. The structure of our campaign is trying to go, okay, how can we do that in a way that like where the media will like pay attention, will amplify that message, and that's really why we don't think. I think that if we had said we can do both, probably lots of people wouldn't have heard what we were actually saying. They would have heard that as a pro-vegan message, which they would have then pushed back against, because they just really don't want to hear that. And also, like, probably, let's be honest, like I my partner would tell you that like I am one for ranting about how like dumb I think the media is often, and just like this is one of my big bugbears, is that like you can't have like reasonable, sensible conversations in the media. But I think that had we put out a really nuanced kind of like message, probably just like no one would have listened at all. And while I think there are legitimate there are definite risks with the approach we've taken, and we could be wrong. Like it could be that this was just not a good idea. Like I'm open to that. What we felt was those risks were relatively minor because we're trying to speak to people who already really don't like the idea of being vegan. And also just like media stories don't tend to stick in the consciousness for very long. I imagine most of the people will just have forgotten about what we've done. Like I think the most likely outcome of what we're trying to achieve here is that like in a month or two's time, basically everybody will have forgotten about it, right? It will have achieved not very much at all. Like the positive version of that is that we do manage to persuade a lot of people to give money, and we make a big difference. But like it's very possible it's just like goes into the ether, and like nobody really listens. So I think the risks are fairly low. I think the risks are actually like fairly low. The upside is like really quite positive, which is that we could bring in a lot more money for a lot of really great organizations that are supporting, making animals' lives better. To be clear, like none of the money raised through this campaign or through any of our other campaigns goes to like FarmKind. We pass on all the money that we raise to the charities that we recommend. Like that's so I think I guess I think that there is those are valid critiques, those are valid risks. I think those risks in reality are like quite low, and we think that like the prize here is to help a lot of animals.
So it's I said to put this in a more uncharitable way than I've been quite charitable so far, but just make one exception if you don't mind. And I'm asking for permission, but it feels a little bit like, I know that you've said the risks are low, but I'll explain why I don't entirely agree with that now. It does feel like Veganuary was sort of sacrificed at the altar of raising money, right? For charity, but still sacrificed at the altar of donations. And the reason I say that is because, maybe the risks are lower than I perceive them. It doesn't change that the Veganuary, the organization, was sacrificed for a goal of another organization. And the main risk I see here is that I saw Aidan, Aidan saying that he hopes to get this on Piers Morgan, get someone on Piers Morgan to debate this. If it gets to that point, I mean, GB News is already pretty big. I mean, there are clips from Piers Morgan that were 4 or 5 years ago still circulate, and they are anti-vegan clips. I still get people quoting Piers Morgan almost word for word when they argue against veganism with me on a daily basis, right? So the idea that this would just be out and not in the zeitgeist anymore, I think, sure, if it sticks at this sort of national level, but if it blows up to Piers Morgan level, this will be around for a long time. People would use this as an argument against vegans and say, oh, well, these guys, she used to be vegan. She used to even work for Veganuary. I mean, she probably knows more than you. She was a vegan for 30 years. And as far as I understand, by the way, I don't know if you want to talk about this, but she isn't vegan currently. So I know someone reached out to me and told me that, someone close to Tony. So, this all being the case, I know Tony's not saying that publicly, but still, ex-Veganuary speaking out against Veganuary, speaking out against veganism and vegan ideals, vegan advocacy, I think it's very sticky. I think it could be stickier than you've predicted. So this is a major concern. On top of that, it's I want to ask you a question. This is if you want to stop and respond to that, you can. Otherwise, I could ask you a question.
I will just really, really quickly. So specifically, we don't ask anybody who works with FarmKind what their diet is, because our mission is to say, look, we care that what we care about is, are you aligned with our mission, which is to end the suffering of animals in factory farms. Everything else is like up to you. But
to be clear, sorry, just interject. I wasn't suggesting that you should do that, or that everybody who should be vegan. But I was suggesting that specifically your person who is the face, there is the risk that she would answer that question. Like Piers Morgan goes, "Are you a vegan?" No, I'm not. I was for 30 years. Now I'm not. Additionally, working for FarmKind. Additionally, anti-vegan.
This is why I was gonna. So this is why I wanted to specifically. I was just prefacing. She was asked. This was the first question in her GP News interview.
Oh, was it?
To which she said, "So now I know, because I didn't ask before, because I didn't want to ask." Okay. But she said she is still a vegan. So I just wanted to briefly correct the record on that. But please do ask your question.
Yeah, no apology if I got that wrong. Again, this is I suppose it's Yeah, hearsay versus the horse's mouth. I should have watched the GB News interview.
Used to be a high-profile backer of Veganuary. It has turned her back on the cause and is now involved with animal welfare charity, which encourages people to, you guessed it, eat meat. I'm glad to be joined now by Tony Vernelli. Tony, great to see you. So you were a vegan, and you've you now munching steaks again? What happened?
No, my diet hasn't changed since I
Are you
was
still a vegan? Got it.
And we're not encouraging people to take up meat eating. We're encouraging them to do something about the meat they're already eating.
So the question that I would ask then is flipping the script, like flipping this back on yourself. I mean, you said it was worth the risk. You don't feel like it was a big risk. If Veganuary or a vegan abolitionist organization did this to FarmKind, found a way to basically, I mean, I really do view this as like a real decimation of Veganuary. Like it nothing could hit Veganuary harder than someone in their own camp starting a campaign that appears to be anti-Veganuary. If that was flipped the other way around, imagine something you've been working on for a long time, like years and years, built from zero, a welfare reform campaign, and it's your baby, and you know what I mean? You've put all your blood, sweat, and tears into it. And then an abolitionist vegan group comes out and just destroys your reputation, probably, gets a lot of people to no longer do your thing anymore and go for them. But they justify it the way you did. Like, I think we feel the risk was pretty low and we sort of gave them a heads up and, we've got our strategies and our ideas. How would you feel about it?
Yeah, so I don't think that we are, I guess, like, firstly, I will answer this specific question, but I don't think we're decimating Veganuary. I suspect that their numbers of participants will be higher again this year than they were last year, as they have been for the last sort of few years, right? So. Yeah, hopefully, right? But like, should people be allowed to criticize us? Like, absolutely. Many people have recently, and they should be allowed to do so.
Criticize, yes. a fully planned out campaign with TV appearances and media. It's not a minor criticism. I mean, it wouldn't feel good, right? It wouldn't feel good. Let's be honest. It would be pretty gutting, actually, I'd imagine. If someone did that to me with my advocacy, I would be devastated if someone went on TV specifically to talk bad on my work. I mean, or an organization I run. I would be absolutely devastated, to be honest.
Yeah. So what was great about the TV is we didn't have to talk about we didn't talk about Veganuary at all. We were simply able to go on and say, look, you can help a lot of animals you don't have to go vegan to have a lot of animals. You can, like, factory farming is terrible. We all agree. And these are some great ways. We didn't mention Veganuary at all in the TV interview.
Cool.
Yeah. So
Piers won't let you get away with that, though. If you go on, he'll make sure you go after them.
But like, to try and like take the question head on, because I think it's a fair question. Yes, if someone like launched a big campaign that was like criticizing the approach of our organization, then yes, I would personally feel like sad about that, and I would feel like it wouldn't feel good. I do think, though, even given that, I think that and I do care about like what the people at Veganuary, how they feel, and wouldn't do anything that I thought was like just like trying to make them feel bad for the sake of it or anything like that, right? What I do think is that like the most important thing for us in the movement, and I think everyone at Veganuary would agree with this, is not like our personal feelings, but it is the way that the animals feel and what happens to them. We're all ultimately pushing to do that, and if somebody thought that the best way to help animals was to come out and with a like Tom Norman sucks campaign, then like, honestly, like, although I wouldn't be happy about that, I think they should do that,
Right. Okay. So I have a couple more questions for you. Again, we're on the same, and just to reiterate, if anyone's got this far in, to reiterate, this isn't intended to be an interrogation. It's intended to get some answers to some tough questions because, you guys came out firing. And I know it doesn't feel that way, but it does to a lot of people. So I think it's important to ask some of these tough questions, even if they might feel a little bit uncomfortable. It might feel like an interrogation. You can get a spotlight on you if you want over there, make it a bit more uncomfortable. turn the heating up. But it's not.
I'd like
it's
to turn
not-
the heating up, to be honest. It's a bit nippy in here. But
But again, to reiterate, it's not the intention. As
Yeah.
I've said, I'll repeat it again. FarmKind, I see it as a tool in the toolbox, not inherently against FarmKind. Just this specific campaign, it's controversial. Now, again, you've clarified a lot of things, but I do want to put this out there: is with this campaign as it stands, and the way it is put forward. It does appear to have, you've said this is a strategy, but it is coming out to people who don't know the strategy, of course. The general public sees this as, okay, Veganuary is bad, don't go vegan, and do this instead. That's the message they receive, whether it's intended that way or not. That's the message they receive. It appears to be like an anti-vegan message. And in place of that, instead donate and we can reform some things, because that's good enough, basically, is kind of what they receive. And that might work to get them donations. But I want to talk about the sort of, if the campaigns continue in this light, like this way, and it keeps going that route, I want to talk about sort of the world that could lead to or build, or the sort of society that could build. Now, if we have three options here, I suppose I would say, and again, this is not really a question; it's more of a statement or like an idea. And you please give me how you react to it, however you feel. So, there's one world where people accept not veganism necessarily, but vegan ideals, right? Like the ideas that vegans put forward, like, hey, let's not exploit and kill animals if we don't have to, right? We're not all in survival mode. Animals are thinking, feeling, conscious. This is not an opinion. They're conscious, they're sentient, they think, they feel. That's fact. But the opinion is, so we shouldn't do these things to them, especially when we don't have to. And that's the opinion. And people start to get on board with that. And imagine 50 years from now, the world would look a lot like a very, very, very good place. We can agree on that. In World 2, they don't only do that, they actually also donate to the organization like FarmKind. That would be an even better world, I think we can agree. If people change their mindset, change the way they consume and do that, then that's an even better world. But option 3 for me feels quite dystopian. Like if we take your campaign at face value and we take it to its logical conclusion, we end up with I would say not a very nice world. We end up with a world where the wealthy can just simply, quote, offset all the bad things they're doing to animals. And the more wealthy you are, the more you can consume and the more you can offset. And the less wealthy you are, if you're poor, you literally can't offset. But also you're being told, don't change your consumer habits. So the poor literally just continue doing whatever they were doing before and don't change. And I think, as we both know, the, quote, poor people make up the vast majority of the world population, right? So the vast majority of the world population doesn't change. The elites and the people with money don't change the way they see animals. The same number of animals or more continue to be bred into captivity, and people just offset it by trying to improve the conditions. And that's World 3. So yeah, what's your take on that?
Yeah, so I guess to like address the kind of economic inequality piece first, because I think it's a really interesting and an important point. So if we think globally, because you said like, we know most people are globally are poor. This is certainly the case. One of the reasons that meat eating is on the rise is because people globally are getting wealthier, which is one of the like kind of troubling things, I think, for us as animal advocates. Is we clearly want people to be doing better and like being able to like afford like higher status foods, like unfortunately like meat, because this is a good sign ultimately that like human lives are improving around the world, which is really important. But it has this cost, which is that like is also meaning that people eat more meat. So like a lot of like the world's poorest are sort of, if you like, accidentally vegan or like vegan-ish because they simply cannot afford to eat animal products. If we're talking just about like kind of the developed world and countries in sort of like, the UK, US, Western Europe, this kind of thing, the amount to offset that we calculate with the charities that we recommend is as I say, it's $23 a month, which is like an amount that like I think a large number, not everybody, but a large number of people in these societies can afford like that amount of additional money. So I think that like that, I guess I think that context is like quite important. It's not like this is a kind of like hyper luxury good to be able to sort of make yourself feel better by paying money or anything like this. This is like because we can change the lives of animals for really small amounts of money, like less than $1 to free a chicken from a cage, this is actually something that I think is like affordable for like a very large number of people in Western societies. And really, like we are the problem, right? Like we're consuming the vast majority of the animal products. We're consuming, even though factory farming is growing in like Asia and places like this and South America, it's still fundamentally us. We, especially in Europe and in the US, we are just eating vastly more meat per person than like anybody else. We are the driving force still behind the problem of factory farming.
And just to briefly interrupt, that was kind of, I agree, and that was sort of the point I was making, that the current iteration of your campaigning almost encourages that plus more with the the eating competitions and the don't listen to vegans, don't do Veganuary. It almost says continue consuming like that, just try to offset, which for a lot of people will be a moral license to consume more. Like if you told me that all I had to do was offset my flying, I would fly more. It's very simple, because I wouldn't think not flying. If you told me you don't need to not fly, don't listen to the people who tell you not to fly. We know what we're talking about. Just donate. Not flying has a limit. I would just fly more. So that's why I gave in that future world, it's the same or more animals, not less, in that third world, and that third world I put forward. You know what I mean?
Yeah, so I think there is just a limit on the amount of food of animal products that most people want to eat, and I think it is also the case that like many people are already eating meat, or at least like some kind of animal product with like every meal of the day already. So I would slightly question like how much more meat, like even if people felt that like somehow they've been given a license to like behave in a way that they weren't otherwise going to behave, like how much more meat they would eat. I just think that's probably like not going to be that much. I also think that like, again, like our campaign is really like, I think our campaign is like saying to people who again weren't very predisposed to the vegan message, like there is something else you can do, because don't you agree that factory farming is terrible? So I don't think that like but to go back to your kind of scenario thing, because I appreciate we're trying to move on to like this thing, and I think it's a good question. Again, I think it comes down to like, where are we right now, and then what does the role of FarmKind in our work play? I think what we play is like a stepping stone. So the solution to ending factory farming, ultimately, in the very end of that, is not going to be like cage-free campaigns in themselves. What cage-free campaigns do is they get chickens out of cages. It's really, really important, and it's a step, I think, to a factory farming-free world, because it makes like the lives of those animals better, and it increases, like these kinds of campaigns increase the costs of these products, which makes things like alternatives more cost competitive, which is really important, because I think that that's probably how we're going to get to a factory farming free world, is by identifying alternative products that people are prepared to eat instead. So products that like taste the same, are as cheap, are as available, things like probably like cultivated meat, and things like alternative proteins. And I think that's probably the way that we like solve this problem ultimately. And to do that, money is going to be a massively important part. Obviously, like our donations are not on their own going to like be enough to like create cultivated meat, but what they do is they support organizations to go out and like unlock private finance, to unlock government money, and that's really what is going to like create the viability of the kind of the alternative protein sector.
Okay. Yep. Fair enough. I agree with you, by the way, on the lab meat side of things. I think that ultimately will do more. That'll change more things than any of us and our advocacy could ever do, unless your advocacy is lab meat advocacy, then obviously you are doing it. And I think if people can get past the ick factor there, if we could just get past the the meat industry propaganda, the ones that won't let go, if they just get on board with it and realize there is a bunch of money to be made out of this, and it's, I understand there's systems in place and there's infrastructure and stuff, but can you imagine a meat company? They've got all these animals and all this blood and all this guts and all these diseases and all these things, antibiotics and all the things they have to take care of. And instead they could just have a nice clean factory that makes the same product. I mean, I know there are stumbling blocks, and I know there's like, history and things, the conservative mindset of like, I don't want to give up my tradition and stuff, but bloody hell, I mean, at some point some when the new generations come through, some of them are going to start to realize, well, wait, we're missing a trick here. This is so much better, and eventually it'll be cost effective too. So yeah, I can see that future coming as well. I have one more question for you before we get to it. Can you tell us where can people go then if they want to find out more about FarmKind and the actual message behind the behind what's in the media? Where can they find that?
Yeah, thank you. So our website is farmkind.giving. So you can find out all about us there. You can find out about the charities that we recommend. If you don't like us because of this campaign, I understand. What I would say is, one thing I want to say really clearly is we didn't consult the charities that we recommend before we did this campaign. They don't endorse this campaign. If you find out about them and think they're still great, but you really don't like us, I would suggest that you go to their website and donate to them. And don't tell them you found out about it through FarmKind, because they're still great, even if you think we suck.
Fair enough. And I'll add to that as well. If you really, really don't like FarmKind or any of those charities, but you do want to donate some money, then please consider donating to Veganuary. I believe they have uncapped matching donations. So if I think this is true. Someone can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe anything you donate gets matched, no matter how much you donate. And that's ridiculous. If someone wants to donate like $100,000, it would just turn into $200,000, which is absolutely phenomenal. And if not Veganuary, of course, there are great groups out there. I love We the Free. I think We the Free are a fantastic advocacy group. They have great trainings for activists and all that sort of stuff and do great work on the streets. So yeah, please consider donating to somebody. Your money goes a long way. Okay, my last question for you, Tom, is based on the work you're doing. It's linked with our last question actually before. Based on the work that you're doing, where do you actually place us in terms of the future for animals, like good, bad, ugly? And I asked you I gave you 3 examples of worlds in 50 years. Okay, where do you actually think we're going to be in 50 years?
Yeah, so I think fundamentally, I don't know, but that's a really boring answer. So
yeah, we'll finish that. Thanks, guys. Thanks, Tom.
So I think there are some reasons to be really optimistic and to have some hope. So one of those I think is cultivated meat and these alternatives. Like we are seeing these as like, that sector has some difficulties. It kind of had a bit of a kind of wave, but like often with technologies, you have this kind of period of like excitement, and then there's kind of like a dip where actually a lot of the real work gets done, and then you see the kind of explosion at the end. I think it's not a dead cert, but I think it's still a really exciting area and gives us an opportunity to say to people, you don't have to like give up things. You can just have this thing that's basically the same product as the one that you like, but it's way better for the environment. It's so much better for animals, and also doesn't have all kinds of the other kind of social justice and human problems that come along with factory farming. I think that AI is going to be a really interesting thing for animals. There is a lot of really kind of potentially very negative and scary things about it, but there's also some real opportunities, for example, in cultivated meat breakthroughs, but also in things like being able to identify diseases in like animals in farms earlier, so that we can that farms can like address this and like make sure that those animals don't die. So improving the lives of like AI could improve the lives of animals as well as make them worse. So I think there's some real hope in these things. And also like the charities that we recommend and we support, and other amazing charities doing great work, they are like scoring wins for animals like every month, every year, right? And that is really exciting. And although the problem is it's a really big mountain to climb, the reality is that we are finding things that work. We are making the lives of animals better. Like if you look at in the UK, the animal welfare strategy, I think is genuinely got some really exciting things. If it happens, and I think that's an if, but if it does happen, that will be one of the biggest transformations for animals in the UK's history. The EU has just finished a consultation on cage-free bans. If they did that would be the biggest transformation in animal welfare in animals' lives in like the history since we invented factory farming. So there's some really exciting stuff out there. There are a lot of problems, and there are a lot of things that we're all working day in, day out to try and address. And that's why I say, again, I am very personally, I want other people to be like disagreeing with us and trying other strategies, because we definitely could be wrong. And this is a big challenge that's going to require a lot of different strategies. And like you say, lots of different tools in the toolbox. But I think that like we have a real shot, I think, actually, of like in 50 years being in one of those positive worlds.